Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Monte Hummel, and I only have one image, and that's it. It is with genuinely mixed feelings that I conclude the evening with a living tribute to Alex Hall, the longest-serving professional Arctic canoe guide in Canada. And I say living tribute because Al is still very much with us, feisty, defiant, irreverent, and reflective. We are video recording these remarks so that he can receive them up there in Fort Smith in the Northwest Territories. As Becky mentioned, Al had hoped to be with us tonight, but his current state of health prohibited that. A man who has spent 46 years paddling under big tundra skies now spends most of his day in a special chair, adjustable thanks to what Al describes as lots of buttons that help alleviate the pain. And I say I speak with mixed feelings because for sure there's the personal friendship, admiration, and respect that I feel for Al. But all that is tinged with sadness and, frankly, anger. Sadness given his cancer prognosis, and anger that this disease knows no boundaries, no morality, and no justice. We have all been touched by it in some way. Last April, and that's less than a year ago, Al anticipated a 2018 season through Canoe Arctic that was fully booked, including reservations right out into 2019. Then his life was turned upside down. First came the shock of the bad news, the diagnosis. Then he began chemotherapy that continued right through to late August. Al had to immediately notify his clients and refund all their deposits, even though he had already purchased food and other supplies. He sold off tents, packs, canoes, and eventually his entire one-man business. Recently, he undertook radiation treatments in Edmonton, but now they say he isn't strong enough for immunotherapy. Al has been a warrior throughout, but like I say, no morality, no justice. Last fall, at a special ceremony, the government of the Northwest Territories recognized Alex Hall's lifetime contribution to tourism in the Territories. He was the first person there to take a chance at actually making a living guiding canoe trips in the Arctic, and his first trip had one customer. Since then, Al reckons he's had a couple of thousand clients. He has seen over 1 million barren ground caribou, thousands of muskox, over 100 grizzly bears, and over 1,000 Arctic wolves. Wolves are Al's favorite wildlife species, dating back, no doubt, to our mutual mentor, Doug Pimlott, in Algonquin Park and on Baffin Island during our university days. Ironically, I began my work at WWF in 1978, my very first day, I delivered the eulogy at Doug Pimlott's memorial gathering, who also died of cancer. The last time I tripped with Alex, he had over 80 wolf dens committed to memory and also meticulously documented on his trip maps, along with every other animal he saw. Those precious, now nationally significant diaries of field observations over 4 decades will reside in the NWT archives at the Prince of Wales Heritage Centre in Yellowknife. So good on the Northwest Territories government, but in a way, both Al and I felt that the Wilderness and Canoe Symposium is an even more appropriate venue to recognize his work. And I'm talking about the feeling in this room. I'm talking about kindred spirits who have also felt the strength of the river's current in your arms, and the cold water on your fingertips as you paddle. I'm talking about experiencing the wild not just in your head, but in your muscle and bone. It's what Aldo Leopold described as fitting into the landscape. It means bonding with a wild place so closely that you have a shared blood supply. You are of that place. You are that place. For Al, the wild landscape he has come to know better than anyone else is the barren lands of the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. In his award-winning book, Discovering Eden, Al wrote, and I quote, "The barren lands have become my religion, my church. They're sacred ground. I worship them. My soul is there. That is why my ashes will go one day. That is why my ashes will go there one day, so my body and spirit will remain part of the barren lands forever." End of quote. Well, I'm pleased to report that a small group of us did manage to get Al back out to his beloved barren lands early last September. And we did indeed visit the very place where he wants his ashes to rest. No one wanted to say it out loud, but we all knew this trip was likely the last time for Al. Our departure in a turbo otter with a canoe lashed to the struts was delayed a day by a blizzard at our destination. It's early September, folks, in the barren lands. And that destination was so far from Fort Smith that it required refueling at a cache on our way out and on our way back. And I can tell you, the first guy out of the plane in his waders walking down the pontoon and wading into shore to help with the refueling was Alex Hall. So a blizzard, we had limited time, literally a limited window. But I tell you, it was like some great spirit parted the clouds and declared, "This trip will happen." And lo and behold, the sun emerged, and it lit the tundra ablaze with autumn color. Even Al had never seen it so beautiful. That emotional trip reminded each of us of our personal reservoir of memories, stories, friendships, and indelible images celebrating a deep feeling for wild country. Each one of you has that kind of reservoir too. But Alex Hall has gone beyond all that. He has made an enduring contributions beyond even what Al knows to help conserve and maintain that which has inspired his life. For example, in the late 80s, it was Al and the Inuit of Baker Lake who led the charge to keep uranium mining out of what was then called the Thelon Game Sanctuary. Today, we still have a world-renowned, intact Thelon River and wilderness. Alex Hall inspired that. In the 90s, it was Alex Hall and David Pelley who dreamed up a Central Barrens conservation vision to link the huge Queen Maud Gulf migratory bird sanctuary along the shores of the Arctic Ocean, south inland to the Thelon Wildlife Sanctuary, and if possible, southwest to the proposed national park east of Great Slave Lake. WWF inherited this continentally significant vision, some of which is now in place. In 2008, for example, we saw the interim protection of over 10 million hectares around Great Slave Lake. These are the Akecho traditional lands that extend eastward right out to the Thelon and southwest as far as Wood Buffalo. That land withdrawal was the largest in Canadian history, And Alex Hall inspired that. In the mid-90s, both Al and I testified at the environmental assessment hearings for the first diamond mine in Canada. Typically, my testimony and my presentation included maps and numbers and tons of cold conservation biology. Al simply read a heartfelt statement about what was at stake. He correctly predicted that the mining industry with its attendant roads was about to open up the Central Arctic from Lac de Gras right up to the Coronation Gulf. It was emotional testimony that Al himself struggled to finish. Yet, so clear and powerful that it brought tears to the eyes of many in the hearing room, including panel staff themselves. As a result of those hearings and a subsequent legal action, WWF helped obtain the Northwest Territories Protected Areas Strategy, which has since set aside over 20 million hectares of Dene territory, primarily in the Mackenzie River Valley and watershed. Alex Hall inspired that. In this decade, barren ground caribou, which once moved like a living tide over the tundra, have experienced dramatic, synchronous declines right across Arctic North America. For example, the famous Bathurst herd is down 98%. Baffin Island down 98%. Coates Island down 88%. Blue Nose East down 83%. Blue Nose West down 81%. And the George River herd, traditionally the largest in Canada, has crashed from some 800,000 animals to just 5,500, down 99%. The Beverly herd, which Al and his clients encountered most often, is now functionally extinct. Yes, in less than 10 years, well within your lifetime and mine, we have witnessed the complete loss of a once great herd numbering over 250,000 animals. Al recently co-authored a thoroughly researched scientific paper documenting this tragedy and authoritatively sounding the alarm. In the last 2 to 3 years of guiding, he saw no caribou at all. He thought they took the wolves with them because he saw no wolves, leaving behind what Al now considers to be an empty land in the Central Barrens. So, I have been doing the rounds in Ottawa, lobbying for approval of a Nunavut land use plan that would establish some 30 million hectares of new protected area. Most of this is crucial caribou habitat, such as calving grounds and migration routes. Whether he knows it or not, Alex Hall is still inspiring that work. To conclude, ladies and gentlemen, friends, I give you a fellow traveler who has known wild country like few others anywhere in the world. I give you a great Canadian who has transformed people's lives by introducing them to one of the last great wilderness tracts on earth. I give you a tall, fit trip leader who sterned a fully loaded 20-footer, yet he could still finish portages well ahead of the rest of us. A guide who seemed to know every pebble on those sparkling river gravel bars swept smooth by pristine wild water that Al still describes as gin clear. So I give you a gifted writer, never overwrought with purple prose or lapsing into too much description. Instead, paring back his prose naturally so that the thing itself shines through, and speaking with the clarity of someone who has actually been there. And finally, I give you a man who has made and continues to make a real difference by inspiring the protection of what inspires him and what inspires all of us. Now I'd like to ask the camera to pan you, the audience. And since this is going to be sent up to Al, I wonder if I could, you've all been sitting all night, I wonder if I could ask you all just to stand. I want you to imagine Alex Hall sitting there looking at you from his special chair up in Fort Smith. Let's together recognize a life that has been a triumph and not a tragedy. Please join me in sending Alex Hall a surge of appreciation. Al, this is for you.